Welcome to this week's installment of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale with Don Henniger. I'm Don, and with me is my podcast partner and man who always has good news about Scottsdale.
Hey, Governor, how are you?
Oh, man, Kevin, I'm great. You know why I'm great?
Why?
Because we have a wonderful guest today. I'm always great when we have good guests.
But before we get to it, first things first.
Oh, isn't that funny? Oh, I can tell we're going downhill quick now, you know. So today we have a woman who has done amazing things in our community. In fact, chances are if you look behind just about any important issue in our city, you're likely to find Melinda Gulick involved in looking for ways to work on it. Welcome, Melinda.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Glad to have you here today. So Melinda is the CEO of First Things First, Kevin, as you just try to give a little plug there for. Since March 2022, almost 2 years.
Yes.
Overseeing all aspects of Arizona's early childhood agency. She joined First Things First, like we said, just about 2 years ago. Prior to that, she ran her own management consulting firm, focused primarily on nonprofit organizations. And she previously served as an executive at the MB Associates for 14 years and was the executive director of several local nonprofits. But hang on to your hats, because here's where it gets fun. She has won the Hodges Alumni Achievement Award from Scottsdale Leadership. Kevin, you know about that.
A little bit.
In 2020, she was inducted into the Scottsdale History Hall of Fame. She's also on the boards of the Scottsdale Chamber and the Scottsdale Charles Foundation. Melinda, you're an all-star. That's all there is to it. Congratulations.
I should have edited that bio.
No way. No, there's no self-editing here. This is all just the real truth.
Well, I think that was a brief one. I mean, you could have gone
I could have gone on. I cut a bunch of stuff out. Are you kidding me? Yeah, we could have been sitting here for the next half an hour talking about all this stuff. Melinda, what has motivated you over the years to be so active in supporting our community in all sorts of ways? What drives your passion for that?
Well, thanks for asking, Don. That's really sweet. I grew up in Scottsdale, and I'm a product of the Scottsdale schools. I came back and made Scottsdale my home. My late husband was very involved in the community. In fact, we met when I was the executive director of Scottsdale Leadership, touring the class through STARS. Where he was on the board.
Small world, huh?
Very small world, yes. Very, very small town. And my parents gave me a heart for service. They served throughout the community and demonstrated the importance of giving back. And I feel like Scottsdale is part of my fabric, and I'm proud to be part of its fabric in my own small way.
Kevin, this is why we do these podcasts. Yeah. We talk to people like this who have that in their DNA to make Scottsdale someplace special. That's what it's all about.
Since she mentioned her parents and giving her that love of giving back, her mom Judy is a big supporter of Family Promise.
Oh yeah,
right?
she was. We worked on the capital campaign together. Absolutely,
big supporter.
She is.
Yeah.
From serving on the board to cooking meals, and she's amazing.
Yeah. Rolling up her sleeves. I see her at church at St. Barnabas a lot too, where she's a big supporter and does a lot of cool things on our campus at church as well. So I think this is a family thing going on here is what I was saying, right? I can't wait to see what your boys grow up to be like when they start getting involved in the community.
Me too.
Yeah, I'll bet. Sooner the better, huh? Exactly. Well, maybe not. You don't I
don't want to rush it, but
take your time for sure. So you've been a big supporter of the Scottsdale Unified School District, and we'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes, but that's why it seems like your job now at First Things First is so closely aligned with what your passion has been that way. So First Things First, it's a group committed to the healthy development and learning of young children from the time they're born till the time they're about age 5 or getting ready to go into kindergarten. So talk about First Things First a little bit. Give us an overview of your work there.
Sure. Thank you. So First Things First was created by voters in Arizona in 2006. We're funded by the tobacco tax, and about over 90% of that tax revenue goes straight to services for children and family throughout Arizona. We focus in 3 specific areas: early learning, parent and family support, and children's health. And I feel really passionate about the work we do because we're serving Arizonans from Page to Douglas, from Window Rock to Yuma. We work with 19 of the 21 federally recognized tribes in Arizona.
Wow.
And we work in Maricopa County and Cochise County, and it's really an honor. I'm humbled to have the role. What attracted me to it also is we have a shared governance structure. So I report to a board that's appointed by the governor. They serve 6-year terms. That board appoints what we call regional partnership councils. So each one of our 28 regions throughout Arizona has their own council of 11 volunteers.
Wow.
Who helps prioritize. They get all the data for their region. They take that data and prioritize the highest need, and then we give grants based on that prioritization. We distribute about $100 million a year, and it's an amazing shared governance structure to get that on-the-ground organic intelligence from the community. Parents serve on that board, child care providers, philanthropists, business leaders. So it's a wonderful governance structure, and it's a great way to make sure we're meeting the needs of kids birth to 5.
That's wide. I had no idea it was that widespread.
And I had no idea their budget was that big. 100 million. You give $100 million a year.
We give $116 million a year.
Wow, that's a big impact right there.
You would think so,
Right.
But interestingly enough, tobacco tax is a declining revenue source, which is.
I was ask about that.
I was going to ask about that too.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing from a public health perspective, but from the revenue source is declining, but the needs of children and families are not.
Right.
And so we've seen about a $15 million drop in our annual revenue from 2 years ago to last year when we have the latest financials. So we're actively thinking about how we will sustain our programming and grow our programming with our state agency partners and nonprofit partners as the tobacco tax dwindles more. It will never go to zero, but it will dwindle more.
Do you get all of the tobacco tax?
We do not.
So you get a percentage of it?
We get 40% of the tobacco tax revenue. And then some goes to Department of Corrections, ADOT gets some. It's a shared revenue source, but we do not have to go to that is our entire budget. So we're not going to the legislature for a general fund appropriation. We get that directed revenue source.
But it seems like someday you might need to, though, right?
Potentially,
Yeah.
yes, potentially.
Is that what the option would be? Was there any to have more legislation that would give you additional revenue streams, or?
I think all options are on the table. One of the challenges we're facing is the pandemic certainly highlighted the need for quality, accessible, affordable childcare for families in Arizona and what a driver of our economy it is. So when we talked to parents and we partnered with the U.S. Chamber Foundation and the Bipartisan Policy Center and the Arizona Chamber Foundation to do a study, and we found that about 70% of employees have missed work or left a job because of childcare issues. 6% have voluntarily left a job entirely, left the workforce entirely. And contrast that with 60% of Arizona's children, birth to 5, live in a home where all the adults work. So the number of children who need quality, accessible, affordable childcare is growing, and it's having an impact on our economy. So just by way of figures, there's $348 million in lost wages and $1.1 billion in lost state tax revenue, creating about a $1.4 billion impact on the economy.
Wow. Which is one of the reasons business groups have always been supportive of First Things First, right?
Yes.
Supportive in ways other than funding, though, since you have your funding set. How is the business community overall, whether it's the Arizona Chamber or specific chambers in all of the communities that you're in, how does the business community support the efforts, and what can they perhaps do even more?
Sure. Thanks for asking that. So it was the business community who kind of created the idea of First Things First. Our godparents, fairy godmother is Nadine Basha.
Oh, right.
And
right,
Eddie,
sure.
obviously, was a big supporter. Basha's was a huge employer throughout Arizona from the same areas that we serve. And they were really the leaders of this idea and the campaign to get it on the ballot way back in 2006. One of the things that is part of the governor's budget right now is a $100 million child care subsidy appropriation to DES. So how does that help First Things First? Well, it helps families in Arizona have access to quality healthcare grows Arizona's economy, and it allows first things first dollars to go further. So right now we've had $1.3 billion of federal funds infused into the Arizona early childhood system, federal relief funds. They've done things like increase the rate that DES and First Things First are paying providers to provide that to provide access to care. We've done some stabilization grants. DES has done some stabilization grants. The more funds DES has in their child care subsidy system, the more we can use our scholarship funds for families that are outside of the income requirements of DES. So very simply, families at 165% of the federal poverty level and below can qualify for DES subsidy, and we can serve families up to 300% of the federal poverty level. Ideally, there'd be enough money in child care assistance at DES to serve all of those families, and we can focus on the families beyond 165%. The state used to provide general fund appropriation for DES child care assistance. They swept those funds in 2008 during the Great Recession. First Things First stepped in at that time to provide what we thought was a short-term emergency funding source for access. And here we are.
Yep. Short-term is not long-term.
Short-term is long-term, 15 years later. So it's important that the state invest, and they have not replaced that funding. So it's important that the state invest general fund in child care assistance, in addition to the funds that we get from the federal government for child care assistance.
Right. So not all areas are created equal. There's probably bigger needs in some areas. And so how do you measure, or how do you balance? I imagine some of the DES funding might play a part in this. If you're dealing with families in poor areas of the state, which may have DES funding, and so maybe you can balance out how you allocate your money. But how does that play out when you're trying to mix with 28 regions and 11, all these councils? How do you pull that all together to figure out how do you, with equity, deliver your funding?
With equity is the key. And that's where the local leadership comes in to help us understand what's happening on the ground. So Arizona is a very diverse state. The topography, the demographics, right? The ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, the number of tribal nations here, and really understanding the parent choice and parent preferences of where their very young children are. So how do we support what we call family, friend, and neighbor providers, which is I need to go to work, but my aunt, my mom, my sister can care for my child, and that's my choice, or it's my only option. How do we support that family, friend, and neighbor provider to make sure that's a quality early childhood experience? In addition to the traditional child care center that we all think of, the faith-based providers, the licensed home care, and unlicensed home care. So we're trying to be responsive to all of the providers in Arizona and how parents are choosing for their children to be cared for, and honoring that, right? Because it's cultural, it's logistical, right? You might live in an area where the closest traditional childcare center is 50 miles away from you, and they might not have space, right? So honoring that parent choice, which is so part of Arizona's DNA, is really important. And that's where the local volunteers really help us prioritize.
Helps to have people on the ground in all those areas, doesn't it? You almost have to do it that way. Yeah.
Are most of the funding that you do for rural Arizona?
No, actually, we allocate our population. We allocate our dollars by population. So 35% is a straight allocation to the regions based on the number of children birth to 5 that live in that region. 40% is allocated based on children birth to 5 in that region who live in poverty. So that's based on either the American Community Survey or the census data. And then 25% is at the board's discretion for whether it would be a statewide initiative, like a systems change initiative, or special things that we want to reinforce in regions. Or we also allocate to particularly small regions. so that they have enough funding in their area to stand up programs. If they don't have enough children, it's hard to get the economies of scale to stand up a program. So the board uses that 25% at their within our mission at their discretion.
Where does Scottsdale fit into that? Can you break it down that closely to see how individual cities, or you're getting ready to look at your notes? Go
I
for
was
it. That's
going to
all right.
look at
Go
my
for it.
notes,
That's all right.
so
I don't expect you to know it off the top of your head. But I mean, here's the reason I ask. When you talk about the homeless situation, people automatically think, oh, there's no homeless in Scottsdale. Well, there's a lot of homeless people in Scottsdale. And same thing probably here, right? When you look at the need for the services that you provide, people might think, well, Scottsdale doesn't need anything. It's such an affluent community. But no, it's not. There's need everywhere, right?
Absolutely. So Scottsdale is part of what we call the East Maricopa region. So it's basically from Cave Creek down to Apache Junction area, not including Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. They have their own region. Tribes can choose to have their own region, or for the same reason that I talked about before, a smaller tribal nation might choose to join with a larger geographic area for economies of scale. For example, Navajo Nation is a standalone. They have a tribal region, but Hopi joins with the rest of Coconino County.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So we partner with family resource centers like the Paiute Neighborhood Center. We are a funder of theirs. To serve the needs of families in Scottsdale all over the place.
Yeah.
We also, our signature program is called Quality First. That's professional development for early childhood educators and incentives for them to improve their program. There's Scottsdale Unified School District community ed programs who are engaged with Quality First, and child care centers all over the city doing that. So do I have the numbers right off the top of my head? No, but we are doing a lot of great work in Scottsdale. And there's a lot of, you think about our assets in Scottsdale, like Vista del Camino, like the Paiute Neighborhood Center, like what will be happening with Tonalia and the Boys and Girls Club. All of those other services in the community we can help weave together to have a cohesive early childhood program.
Helps to have good leadership in all those districts,
Absolutely,
too. We'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah.
We're not going to dig into that one just yet, but we will in a minute because there's some things to talk about there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I did. That's great stuff. I figured that we'd have some participation in Scottsdale. It's great to know that we have a big footprint there.
So overall, how do you sort of measure the impact of all the good work you're doing? How do you sort of tell the story about how you're having an impact?
Well, so we look at things like third grade reading proficiency. So we're going to talk about schools, right? When children show up on the first day of kindergarten, ready to learn, they're a step ahead of their peers that did not have an early childhood experience, an early learning experience. And so how many children show up on the first day of kindergarten ready to learn? What are our third grade reading proficiency scores? We have with the state, the progress meter. So that's measuring third grade reading, and eighth grade, it's measuring retention and promotion from eighth grade and high school graduation and post-secondary attainment. We have lots of focus in Arizona on post-secondary attainment. The Helios Foundation just released a really interesting report called Billions to Gain. And it talks about the billions the state has to gain with post-secondary attainment. And if Helios or Education Forward were here right now, they would also say, right, and to meet those goals, it starts at birth. And so we're measuring all of those factors, and it's also on numbers. How many children do we serve? How many families do we serve? And as a statewide organization, there's about 500,000 children birth to 5 in Arizona.
In that age group. Okay, yeah. That's a lot.
And we touch them in all different ways, serve them in all different ways. Book distribution, family resource centers, we're training their child care providers, helping promote child visits. So all sorts of programs. And it's really responsive to what the need is in the community.
Remarkable work.
Yeah. Have you had to cut any programs because of your little budget haircut there? Or?
Not yet.
Not yet? Good.
I mean, we're always looking for efficiencies, and we're looking to streamline and maximize all of the state agency and municipal opportunities to support early childhood. Like, think about the local library. How can we work with local libraries who are already doing amazing early childhood experiences? Is there some way for us to work together instead of this agency's doing this program, this agency's doing this program, this agency's doing, their own distinct program?
What programs would you like to see enacted that you haven't stood up yet, that's maybe due to constraints?
Well, not due to constraints, I don't think, but Paiute Neighborhood Center is a perfect example. They have a family resource center. Mm-hmm. So Family Resource Center, actually, I am going to refer to my notes on this one.
All right.
Family resource centers are community hubs where families who are in need can go for connection to resources. What happens in a lot of cases is we identify a family that we think is in need, and we report them to the Department of Child Safety, which opens an investigation, which is probably not because the child is in danger. It's because they have food insecurity or housing insecurity. You are both very active in the homeless population and services and for the unhoused. And the families that you serve, aren't necessarily unsafe.
Right.
They have a need, they have a vulnerability. And so these family resource centers, providing a network of family resource centers throughout Arizona who have best practices, who have current updated resources, is a prevention strategy, right? Before it becomes desperate, to help families connect to resources in the community. So those exist in places like Paiute. They exist in libraries. They exist in community county health clinics. School districts have them as well. And it's really that holistic approach to family wellness, more of the wraparound supports that a family might need. I would like to see us really focus on family resource centers as a prevention strategy, not just for children birth to 5, but for families. Mm-hmm. And also really understand how to support family, friend, and neighbor care, because it's such a huge component of the early childhood experience in Arizona.
In addition to prevention, some of these, particularly we see this with Family Promise, a lot of these people it's temporary. They just need a little bridge to get over a gap. Mm-hmm. And if they don't get that bridge, then they're in trouble. But if they get that little help, this little helping handle on the way, they can get back on their feet again.
So I'm sure you've seen, you go here for SNAP, and you go here for WIC, and you go here for utility assistance, and you go here for a bus pass. And then if you need childcare assistance, and if you need unemployment. And so this closed loop referral system would be a huge benefit. And that sounds like government speak. So let me tell you what that is. It's one application, right? I am in need of help with my utility bill. I have a universal application that also tells me potentially, oh, you might be eligible for access. You might be eligible for WIC. You might be eligible for SNAP benefits. And instead of taking an already stressed person who probably doesn't have a lot of time, reliable transportation, one of the things we're finding is that their method of communication is a cell phone, and it has limited data, right?
That's
so
right. Sure.
Filling out an application might run you over your data plan, and you're just continuing the cycle. So we've got to do better for citizens, for residents, right? So we've got to do better for families, but that universal eligibility is sort of my dream.
That's a great dream, and there's certainly the capabilities of being able to do that. So it could be at our fingertips, but if we could just make it all happen.
This is why I bet you're a good steward of that, because your past business background is leading you to innovative solutions, I bet, to big problems, right?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, yes.
That's great.
It's been a really interesting lens to look. I worked in, obviously, the private sector for most of my career, and bringing that lens to a state agency has been fascinating. You can talk to my coworkers and see how frustrating I've been for them. But also, I think it's good for us to look at it differently and say, wait, this doesn't make sense.
That's totally right. So let's turn the lens down to a little bit of talk about the Scottsdale Unified School District.
Yeah.
Which you've been so involved with, and you probably still are. I know you are.
Yes to children. She's yes to children.
Yes to children. Right? That's a huge victory for the district.
Huge victory.
This is a big year for the district, particularly in terms of elections and issues and things that are going on. And you mentioned like the innovative stuff that's happening at Tonalea. That takes leadership. And we're at a juncture now on the road where we're going to have an election coming up in November where the 3 seats are open. So leadership, the future leadership of SUSDs, hanging in the balance, or at least still to be determined. What is your thinking about the year ahead for SUSD?
So I think I said at the beginning that I'm a product of SUSD. I went to kindergarten, graduated from Chaparral, went to Cherokee, Kokopah, Chaparral. I have 2 children in the district today, and I'm engaged at their school, and they're having wonderful experience, a very rich, very meaningful, full experience at their elementary school. I think a couple things. One, I am in full support and committed to Dr. Menzel's leadership. I like Dr. Menzel a lot, and I've gotten the chance to know him well over his tenure. He came in COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The flexibility and nimbleness that I saw a district react to. I had a son in community ed in preschool in COVID and a first grader. We made it, but online, switching to online in 2 weeks' time and trying to figure out how to provide a quality early education experience for a preschooler online and how they reached families and parents was pretty amazing. And that, ignited a political masks and all sorts of things, ignited a political debate about public schools, which is unfortunate, in my opinion, because one of the biggest contributors to quality of life in Scottsdale is the quality and support of our public schools, which is why I'm engaged with the Charros, right? Yeah. They're committed to SUSD, and I'm committed to SUSD, and so it's a nice alignment of my passion and their mission. I forget the exact statistic, but SUSD is 127 years old, I think. And they've had 26 superintendents in 127 years. And 13 of those superintendents have been maybe in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's right.
So continuity of leadership is incredibly important. There's 20,000 plus students. There's 3,000 employees. There's 27 campuses. And I believe we need the continuity of leadership. So I was a student when Dwayne Sheldon, the last long-term superintendent, was superintendent, right? And the ability to set a vision and follow through on it is so important. And the school district should be immune, in my opinion, to these political wars. I'm not anti-school choice at all. I think, again, back to the parent's choice in early childhood, it's a wonderful thing in Arizona. My choice is public school, and because of its commitment, contribution, to our property values, our local economy, our quality of life, it's a good investment from the district residents in the school district because the return is so high. The realtors have plenty of studies that show quality public schools increase your property values exponentially. So I could go on and on. I was thrilled to see the election results. It was a for the
override.
For the override, yes. Thank you. Sorry. in 2022, we had a district additional assistance override on the ballot, which is stuff.
Yeah.
And we won 53 to 47. In the maintenance and operations override that was on the ballot this year, which is people and programs. So if you think about DAA is
Salaries,
mostly stuff, M&O is people and programs. It was a 57-43 victory. That's a big margin of victory, and I think shows more support in the face of funded, organized opposition to our campaign. We actually improved the election results. So I think it bodes well for Scottsdale. I'm really hopeful that we'll have quality candidates running for the board. I'm sorry to see the sitting board members not running for reelection because I think they've done a good job. And turnover is good, right? So I'm hoping that we'll see.
We've talked about this a couple times on the show, and that is how fortunate we are that Scottsdale voters very generously voted for the M&O override. We also talked about the implications of other neighboring school districts who did not get passed.
Right.
I heard this yesterday. Maybe talk about Mesa, a big school district, right? I heard this yesterday. It's a stat, and I hope it's correct because I haven't had a chance to vet it. I heard a third hand, but I heard they have 500. They're going to be losing 500 staff members, both teachers and staff. That's a lot.
Because of the failure of the vote?
Yeah.
Wow.
So one of theirs passed, one of them didn't, and they're going back next year. So I don't.
Maybe
if it doesn't pass next year.
Maybe that was a contingency thing, but still, that's a lot of people to lose if they were had to do that.
Yeah, and Mesa's doing some really innovative things in their school district.
Yeah. So here's where we'll probably go because we're running out of time for today. We're going to need to get you back on because we're going to be talking about SUSD as the election season goes down. So we'll have future podcasts about this too. But here's the thing that strikes me about what you said. The continuity of leadership is so important. When you set a vision, you have to have time to let a leader, especially if you think the vision is a good one, to actually fulfill most or not all of that vision. And so maybe if we can take a message forth to our listeners and to people in Scottsdale saying leadership's important. If you think we have good leadership now, do what you need to do in this election season to ensure that we keep the good leadership that we have.
And especially since the first couple of years of Dr. Menzel's term, he was doing crisis management, right? I mean, he didn't have that chance to implement anything he probably wants to do in his vision when he was just managing a crisis and trying to get to the next year.
Well, you can contrast that continuity of leadership with city managers, right? Now we've had years of Jim Thompson.
Good point.
The city is moving in a beautiful direction, in my opinion. He's a good, strong leader.
Solid in every way, right.
And that leadership will help the city withstand the budget crisis or the tight budget.
Challenges.
Thank you. Thank you.
They have challenges for sure.
They have challenges.
Yep.
But that continuity of leadership, trusted leadership, will help them
totally agree.
Weather that. So I know my organization, while it serves a larger geographic place, I have much fewer employees, right? 160 employees versus thousands that the school district has. And just getting all the employees, people own what they help create, right? So having those processes and time together with your employees and set the vision and get people on board and get the community on board, especially in the middle of COVID, is very challenging. And I feel like he's just had a chance to take a deep breath from the crisis of COVID and the education loss that absolutely did occur, and start making up ground and moving the district forward. And you could have a whole podcast on the unsung highlights of SUSD.
And we probably will. Yeah. Because we've done bits and pieces. We've had Scott on a couple of times. But so we're out of time now, Melinda. Fantastic conversation. this topic's not going away. So maybe we'll have to have her back on, Kevin. What do you think?
I think we should absolutely have her back on.
Get down the road with the campaign season.
Sure.
And
Because we just scratched the surface. I want to hear more about her programming and how it's impacting families. I'm sure she has those metrics, those KPIs available. So,
well, from a
Yeah,
Scottsdale
for sure.
standpoint, we need to start talking about who the candidates are, what it's looking like, and they're just starting to kind of rev up now. And so we'll have lots to talk about for sure.
Yep.
Melinda, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much for the amazing work that you're doing in our community. It's awesome to see you and awesome to see the work that you're doing. So, and thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale.